Thank you, Adam. So, anybody here grow up with the tradition of Advent?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of you did. I did not. And yet, over the last several years, I have really been looking at the deeper meanings that I can find in each of the holidays we celebrate, whether they are the traditional, the Christmas, Easter, all of those, but also looking at Kwanzaa, looking at Hanukkah, looking at the Solstice, all of these things that we can weave together. And so it occurred to me, and I was part of a class yesterday, a training on mystical Advent. I thought this is really, really interesting because it does truly symbolize the steps in the preparation that we can each go through in order to experience the birth of a new idea, a greater idea, a light, or a deeper realization of who we are as infinite creations of spirit. And it isn't limited to one time of year, but I think that doing it at least once a year or having a tradition helps us to anchor it here so that when we step out into the world, we have a greater understanding of who we are and how to really bring forth a spiritual practice and see how it is serving us. Does that make sense? It's one of my longer sentences ever. So, little context, and then we're going to light the Advent candles. So the winter solstice, Christ Mass, is a celebration of Emmanuel, or God, which is translated as immanent divinity. And that's what we teach, immanent, absolutely omnipresent, right here, accessible. And so in the Celtic and other indigenous traditions, there is a recognition of the divine within us, which supports us, it guides us, and it manifests in, as, and through us. This is exactly, of course, what we believe here in New Thought and Religious Science. So Advent is where the ancient Celts and Roman Christians come together in an alchemy that is Christmas. And many of you know that the original idea of celebrating the return of the light happened, yes, in winter solstice, but Jesus was born in the spring. But it wasn't convenient for Christmas cards and Hallmark. So we moved his birth to be in the winter. And there's a lot more you can do with a song when you've got winter, apparently. But Advent means that we prepare our homes, our lives, our souls for the birth of this light, a birth of a new light, perhaps a new way of knowing ourselves. Our goal is to experience the presence and the power in, as, and through us always. So we seek to bring forth around us the heavenly world we call home. We call it home, regardless of the appearance of darkness. And that is what is so beautiful about the solstice, because it celebrates the return of the light. You know, we come up on the 21st, which is 2 Sundays from now. And in fact, we'll be celebrating it, the word that we have chosen for that Sunday, because for Advent, you usually select some words that can represent different aspects of the spiritual journey. So the word we have chosen is joy. And that particular day, we will have a visit from a big guy who's wearing a red suit and has a white beard and all of that stuff. And he will be bringing his elves and his wife, and it'll be a lot of fun. And I'll be wearing a very ugly sweater. So you are allowed. We're calling it Holiday Sweater Sunday because I know some of you have some gorgeous sweaters. I, however, tend to go the other direction. So I will be dressed in the ugly sweater tradition. If you want to join me in that, I would love it. And if not, that's okay. So Advent represents that preparation we go through in order to live fully and to wake up, right? It's an anchoring where we can consciously prepare for that something that wants to emerge. Something wants to be born through us. And we may not have the slightest idea what it is. There's something that is just sort of dancing back here, that's calling, or maybe in here or here, that's calling for discovery, it's calling for emergence. And we don't know, since we don't know what it is, we may not have the slightest clue about how to prepare for it logically or practically, because we know that something's there, but what is it? But if we can map our lives, if we can organize our lives according to a deeper spiritual idea, then we can indeed start to prepare mentally, spiritually, emotionally for the birth of that light, something greater than we have experienced before. So last week was the first week of Advent. We didn't choose to celebrate that because it was just yesterday that I went, oh, Advent, we should do that. So we didn't mark it anyway, so we're going to acknowledge it today in its mystical meaning and then move into today's word. And so last week, we're going to light this candle, and the word would be hope. And my friend, Reverend Dr. David Alexander, wrote this, and it's really beautiful because when we have a new idea, there's something about hope that helps to get us excited, right? It opens us up to the possibility. And he writes, hope is the womb of transformation. Whatever is being born in us begins in the unseen, in the quiet courage of belief. Hope says change is possible, even if we are still in the dark night. And you may feel at a distance from that change or possibility, but it's there just beyond the horizon, waiting for you to take the next step. So this beautiful idea of hope means remembering humanity's hope for a new life and for a new world. So today, we light that first candle for hope. Oh, we can always applaud hope. I think next week we'll shift to the battery candles because I've got my little, I'm a middle-aged woman in America fan up here. It might blow it out. I know, I'm stretching middle age, the meaning of that. That must mean I'm going to live to be 170. Okay. And then the second week, we bring our awareness to faith. And faith means accepting the knowing within us that brings forth our greatest hopes. We accept that it shall be as we believe, which is what we teach here, and that what we hold deep down to be true must become our experience. And that is exactly that right there. It is done unto us as we believe. So in the season of preparing for a new birth, a new cycle of being, we accept that where our faith is, our life must demonstrate. And so today we light the candle for faith. And this is the same kind of torch that the Roman Catholics had in the 3rd century. And then we light the Christ candle. Now, I want to give you some insight on that. We know that within us, each of us, is that Christ. The idea of Christ is not Jesus' last name. It is that word which means awake, anointed, aware. And so within each of us is that Christ being born anew, or a new idea, a new expression of that light, of that possibility. And so rather than look at this idea of the teacher Jesus as being our salvation, it is that light within us, our awareness, our awakening, and then our tuning in and organizing our life around that idea. That is our salvation. We are fully connected with and as that divine spirit that we call God, or we call Emmanuel, or whatever it is that you call that name and nature of the presence that surrounds and fills you. And you may call it Allah, you might call it light, great spirit. And it actually doesn't give a rip what we call it. We could call it George. You can call it whatever you want, but all that matters is that we listen to when we have a deeper call. That's what matters. So we light that Christ candle to remember that there is a light within, a greater light within. So this week we seek to maintain the faith that brings forth the world of our greatest hopes. And so think about that this week, that we can seek to maintain the faith. In other words, to begin to look at what is it that I am believing and how can I support that? How can I bring it forth? So there's an idea about this, and it's to begin to really look at what are we committed to? What are we committed to, and how are we organizing our lives around that commitment? How are we organizing our lives? Now, there are times in my life when what I was committed to, I probably should have been committed for. But we all grow. And there's also, there's a difference between being involved and being committed, right? Involved, committed. And just quick reference, the difference between involved and committed is very present if you have a plate in front of you of eggs and bacon. The chicken was involved, the pig was committed. Okay, I'm moving on. I've been waiting 40 years to use that joke. Okay. So we are in this mystical time called the season of light. And I think of it also as the season for every holiday action, there's an equal and opposite reaction of me wanting to curl up in a fetal position under my piano and eat chocolate until the whole thing is over. Anybody else? Sometimes, yeah? I think that we're all awakening, though, to a wiser way of being, so that we're no longer as much, hopefully, running around crazy, trying to buy, spend, and fulfill everybody's unrealistic fantasy or our own of what this holiday should be, because it's truly about the birth. It is about the birth. And our theme this year, as it was last year, is that we are born in original blessing. And that is what we look at. How is that so for us? We don't teach this idea that we are born in original sin. We absolutely do not do that. That was something that was imposed on the ideas that Jesus the teacher taught or his apostles taught. That was imposed many centuries later, this idea of sin. In fact, what was I reading later? The Hebrew word for Satan, Satan, there was no word Satan. The Hebrew word is Satan, and it means mistake or a miss. It was not this being of evil with horns and a whatever, tail and that is not the idea that we are looking at. We are looking at the light, fully light, because even in the darkest night, you light that one little match, you've got light. And the darkness cannot fight that because the light wins, always. So I do actually love what this season represents. And it means for me that it's mindful, albeit busy, because we do a lot here, that this is the time to prepare for the symbolic rebirth of the Christ light, the Buddha light, if you prefer, that namaste light, whatever you call it, that light and wisdom within. And it's also time for me to engage in a deeper reawakening of my own awareness so I can renew and restore my own sense of awe and inspiration. And that is my commitment. That is my commitment. So I seek to organize my life around that. And it's pretty funny. I mean, my husband will tell you, it's less about the presents for me. He and I won't be going like crazy shopping to do stuff for each other, but I love decorating our house. And I love the tree, I love the lights, and he came in the other night from a rehearsal, and I had moved all the furniture in the living room around and put a different tree up than he'd seen, and it was just, but it made me feel so happy, and it awakens me. I have a very patient husband. Yeah, God bless you, Charlie. He's right over there. You can thank him later. He plays guitar and he's nodding. I am passionate about metaphysical and allegorical Bible interpretations. I love to scrape away the dogma. I really want to remove that falsity, that veil, all of that nonsense, the fog of what people have taught us to believe, or society, because it's not so. And so when I look at the metaphysical, when I look at the allegorical, when I look at the symbolic, it has so much rich meaning. Now, I also look at the historical because I do want to get historical context for what was going on. You know that when Jesus was alive, the teacher Jesus, mostly the languages that were spoke were Latin and Hebrew. Now, Aramaic was also part of that, and it began to emerge a little bit later. I hope I'm not just making this up. But the stuff, the words that we read about what he said or what any of the apostles might have said were written mostly about 80 to 100 years later. And I believe Luke might have, is that right? Luke was the only one who actually had some education and could read and write. So it's all passed along by story. Why do I talk about that? Because I wanted to talk about that. I know, because what we have gotten then has been translated from the Hebrew to the Aramaic to the Latin to the Greek and then to the English. Right? So there have been many iterations and many translations along the way and many meaning changes. So when we seek to go back to the original, which is why why we are choosing to do the original closest translation from the Aramaic version of the Lord's Prayer come January, it's because it has a different impact upon us. It's not putting God out here. It is bringing God, that presence, that wisdom right back here so that we know who we are and that we also know that we have the agency of choice, that we get to live lives that bear witness to our knowing that we are guided and created by Spirit. Now here's the thing about commitment. When we recognize what our commitment is, yes, are we organizing our lives around that? Are we organizing our lives according to that commitment? Now, what's interesting is often we make a commitment and we may not even know that we have been dedicated to something until we look at the circumstances that are showing up in our lives. So, if you are in a place of great suffering, of great frustration or judgment, what our invitation is, because I also have to examine this in myself, am I dedicating myself, am I committed to the idea of struggle? Am I committing myself to the idea that life is hard, there must be a struggle, I have to argue, I have to fight for everything? Because if that is my filter, if that is my base, my core belief, then I absolutely am going to have a life that is anchored in struggle. Everything will be hard. So this is where we get to look at it and say, well, what is showing up? I have this, but man, I had to work so hard for it, and I'm still fighting, I'm still arguing, I'm still battling. We can change that. We can shift that to a commitment to the ease and speed of light. We can commit that to the joy of giving our gift rather than I have to have what life wants to give me. That it is about dedicating ourselves to knowing what it is we are here to do, committing and then organizing our lives around that. When I was a musician, which I was for years and years and years, I organized my entire life around that. So I was practicing 7 to 12 hours a day because that's what I knew I needed to do. I organized, that was the priority. And it demonstrated. This is the thing, when we support our belief with the work, the action, the dedication, the commitment, all of that stuff in the earthly realm, then our lives will demonstrate that which we believe and that which we know to do. When I moved into this idea of ministry and I made that commitment to live, even before I had been licensed or knew where I was going to be getting that education, I moved into the life, well, this is what a minister does. And so I began my spiritual practice every day, my journaling and my studying, my reading, and beginning to live and think and know and be supported by those people who were already on the path that I was on. Does that make sense? So, and we can reach back and have mentors who might have been gone for 100 years. For me, I have Emerson. Emerson is one of my mentors. And I can ask Emerson, hey, Ralph. I don't really talk to him that way. And I can look at what it is that Ralph Waldo Emerson would have me know. What is it that he would have me know? And teachers that I've had along my life on this particular spiritual journey, many of them have transitioned, but I can still access what I know that they taught me and what they represented. And I can say, what is it that you would want me to know? What is it that I can bring forth that is rooted in what you have taught? So we can do that. If you have not yet chosen a mentor for yourself in spirit, whether that person is living or not living, I invite you to think about who that mentor might be. It might be Martin Luther King Jr. It might be Emerson. It might be Mother Teresa. It might be any of these. It might be anybody. But who is it that can model for you the idea of commitment? So now, let's look historically a little bit about this idea of Jesus and Mary and Joseph, because we are talking allegorically about the journey. We are on this journey. So we are preparing for this journey of a greater idea emerging through us, a possibility, and maybe it's a new job, a new relationship, a new way of just being in the world, an awakening, a spiritual awakening. So the first thing we do is, I'm feeling the stirring of hope. So that's that first light. Okay, now faith. Well, I'm going to begin supporting that idea by committing to it and doing those things that will help to build my consciousness of that being true for me. As I believe, so is it demonstrated in the world. So I look at the stuff that I want to see demonstrated and I commit to what is it I need to do? What do I need to believe? How do I need to be? What is the awareness mentally, spiritually, emotionally that I need to create? Now, there's some wonderful stuff about Advent and the journey, okay? And that is that Mary and Joseph, okay, we know the basic idea, right? That Mary and Joseph leave Nazareth for two reasons. They leave for two reasons. They need to go back to Joseph's hometown for a census, but also, and mainly, because Mary is pregnant and not with Joseph's child. Now, in the time and place where they lived, this was justification for stoning to death, And she was like 13. She was just she was a little bitty thing. So I'm trying to imagine the conversation between Mary and Joseph. It must have been so weird. Joseph says, I'm sorry you're pregnant, but we haven't been, together. I barely know you, except that your family promised me some sheep and this donkey you're on as a dowry, and you, of course, are like the main part of the deal, and the donkey. And Mary says, well, I had a visit the other night. No, not that kind of visit, Joseph. Get your mind out of the gutter. I had a visit from an angel who said I was going to be giving birth to a child who would change the world. And Joseph responds, well, it's changing my world. Are you sure it was an angel and that you're not, crazy? And Mary responds, an angel. He said his name was Gabriel. And he had big white wings and it was very shiny. There was a lot of light around him. Did anyone else see this angel? No, he came to me in my sleep. In your sleep? Well, sure, because, angel. Now, to his credit, Joseph stood by his word and brought her with him so that she wouldn't be stoned to death, because that really was what would have happened because of that culture at the time. They packed up the donkey and they headed to Bethlehem. Now here's where we get into the metaphysical part of the journey. Bethlehem means house of bread, house of sustenance. It means source, infinite source. Bethlehem within each of us is the infinite source. We are turning within. We are making that journey to source in order to be inspired, to be lifted, and to know a greater truth, to know what is the gift to come forth. What are we to do? Who am I to be in this? And the donkey is a very humble, interesting thing. Riding the donkey happens at the beginning of Jesus' life historically and at the end. Because the donkey represents that animal nature that we all have, which is untrainable, undisciplined, cannot be guided or herded, that we have to work very, very gently with this donkey. And so riding on this donkey, bringing that animal nature, and again, that's where we come back to the Celtic and the traditional, the Orthodox view of we weave these together of the divine and the human. Here is Mary, who represents the divine feminine, on still possessing a human nature and an animal nature, traveling on this donkey, this humble animal, going to Bethlehem, turning within to source. You and I all have our human and our divine sides. And the human is not bad. The human is really vital because it's how we show up here. It's what we do. And we bring forth the divine as us. And so what we do here in this teaching is to find those ways that we can access the truth of our being and no longer live according to a commitment to struggle, a commitment to being so anchored in the world, so anchored to judgment, so anchored to what we're hearing in the news or online, that we forget our divinity and we forget that we are working with something that is infinite potential, that is infinite possibility, not limited. And so my talk today is actually titled A Clear and Present Manger. And the idea is that you and I are each a manger. We are here to give birth in that humble, easy, grace, glory-filled way of just simply turning within and listening to that which wants to come forth, and then doing what we need to do to prepare for that birth, to prepare that place. And the manger, that clarity, means that we say, okay, what is it that no longer serves me, that needs to be swept away from the manger, so that we can be fully present? Because if anything is distracting us from who we are, in other words, getting in the way of commitment to knowing that we are divine and that we can move into this world with power and with family, a spiritual family, we have to sweep it away. We have to clean it. So we need to have a clear and present manger. Now, this journey is what we're all on. And I know you didn't bring a passport today, but I'm thinking we all have enough baggage that we could take a journey to Bethlehem and not be without anything that we need. But Bethlehem, as I said, is that source. We are going into the source. It represents the substance and wisdom center within each of us. So the question is your manger filled with the clutter of your doubts, of your fears, and the beliefs that you're not worthy? Because if it is, you as a manger, you're not ready for the birth. You're not ready. But this journey is one in which we get to clear it out. We get to organize our life according to the commitment to bring forth the birth. So are you ready to clean out your manger? Are you willing to sweep out just like cobwebs of old ideas, the dust of yesterday's fears, the garbage of mental limitation? Because when a new idea takes shape and begins to come forth, it has to come forth in all of its power and its glory, in an awareness of clarity, of clean, whole thinking, and being present. When we try to bring forth a new creation or a new idea within the dirt and mess of who we used to be, that's the key. It means that this idea does not fully express in grace. So if we are trying to bring forth a dream according to the perceptions of who we used to be, or who we have been thinking we are as limited beings, as not connected with the infinite power and presence of God, of spirit, of love, of that Buddha nature, whatever it is, as I said for you. If we are trying to bring something forth in a cluttered, dirty manger, then the birth is not full. The birth is not powerful. So it's up to us to begin to clean out, to clear out that stuff. And the way we do that is we look at our lives. Oh my gosh, I have been committed to struggle. Oh my God, I've been committed to judgment. I've been committed to being mean or being not nurturing to myself. What is it that I've been committed to? And to say, well, it's time now to change that commitment and to organize my life around the commitment to knowing myself as God knows me. Perfect, divine, spiritual. So I just want to finish with this quote from the great dancer and choreographer Martha Graham. And she wrote, "There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action, because there is only one of you in all of time. This expression is unique. If you block it, it will never exist through any other medium, and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is or how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe fully in yourself or your work. You have to keep yourself open. That's what it is. Keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. So my beloved brothers and sisters, I invite you to go through this week in faith, in hope, to go forth in faith and hope, and to keep the channel open. Because if you and I don't, the world will never know the light and the glory that only we can bring. Let's pray. Thank you. Okay, so we turn within, once again, acknowledging the light. Oh my God, how that light shines within us. And it begins to clarify who we are. We are expressions of the divine. And we recognize that there is only one power and presence. It is infinite. It is that which stands as both source and substance, creator and created, and we are its yes. So we say yes right back to that power, that presence, and we say, what is mine to know? Who am I to be? What is mine to do? We turn within and we say yes to the light. And that light begins to shine brighter and brighter and brighter as we recognize and we commit to all that the light would have us be and to do. We release that which is not of the light. We release the fears, the doubts, the judgments, knowing that this day, right here and now, we are born anew. We are born every day. We die to the old, we move into the new, and we are born into great possibility, infinite potential. That which we are longing for with our deepest heart, our greatest passion, is the gift we are here to bring to the world. How wonderful that we know this, we celebrate this, we say yes to it. And so we are blessed by this. We bless this church, we bless all churches, all paths to God, all mosques, all temples, all ashrams, all synagogues, all cathedrals. We bless all of it because we know there are so many paths to God because there are so many of us here, and we are on this journey of awakening. We are blessed, we are grateful, and we surround the world with a knowing of peace, that there is a great deeper awakening for all beings everywhere into the light. We shine the light, we are the light, and we are grateful. I release this word into the law of mind that is God, letting it be so, and together we say, Amen.